Well, this is disappointing. You mean we don't get the cool company logo or any kind of hype montage to start off? How can you possibly call this Pro Skater without it? We haven't even had one of those since Downhill Jam. Oh well. The skateboarding genre looked set for a few extra years in the spotlight following the launch of EA's Skate franchise, alongside Tony Hawk's continued success up until the Ride experiment. People weren't happy with this thing, and honestly, I don't blame them. Even though certain aspects were enjoyable, it just leaves you feeling dissatisfied, and that's before you play the abysmal sequel. And despite Skate 2's hot reception, the third game was a step down. After 3 games, the series hadn't evolved much, and the most recent effort was a rushed, glitchy mess that just kind of came and went, until its resurgence several years later, thanks to the Let's Play scene on YouTube blowing it back up. Tony Hawk said it himself. Activision and EA were competing for a dying game genre. People weren't interested anymore. But I guess even that wasn't enough to stop them from releasing a fucking HD remake of Pro Skater 1 and 2 to try and cash in on their boom period. And I guess, in an effort to recoup some of the losses from the series' last 2 flops, the game didn't even see a physical release. Instead, it made its way onto the Xbox Live Marketplace in July, PlayStation Network in August, and finally PC in September of 2012. You can't get it anymore though, and since I took one look at the game back then and never bought it, I guess that means we're playing the PC version. You can just tell this is a modern game because its only purpose is cashing in on our childhood nostalgia. Yep, really sounds like my childhood. You know, compared to this. I'm sure due to licensing issues or just wanting to mix it up and modernise the soundtrack a bit, we get some new stuff that's not too offensive mixed in with a few of our favourite classics, but I think we'd all just prefer the original music. Thups HD combines several levels from the first and second Thups games. It's not even half though. Out of 20 potential additions, we only get 7. That's bullshit, dude.
Gotta throw a dude in there. Dude.
Of course, this isn't the first Pro Skater remake, but whoa! Spoilers, Jack. For now, let's just jump into the warehouse and get started. Okay, bad start. First impressions, I gotta say, the game looks nice, feels very familiar to play compared to what we've had recently. Something feels a little off though, but I can't put my finger on it. Along with Warehouse, the other levels selected were School 2, The Hangar, The Mall, Venice Beach, Downhill Jam, and finally, Marseille from Pro Skater 2. Even though I only replayed these games recently, it still feels great seeing these classic goals again revamped for a modern release. The thing that always concerns me about modern remasters and remakes though, is the control, how it feels to play. Quite often, you'll see a lot of retro control schemes poorly implemented into newer engines, odd graphical errors, and everything overall just feeling a bit bland. Maybe that's because we've played the originals over and over again, and I wouldn't doubt that, but I'm impressed by how well this game manages to fuck that all up! Let's talk control. Just for clarification, I'm using an Xbox 360 controller to play this, and the biggest issue I'm running into out of the gate is momentum. Momentum feels real sluggish and slow. Even when I max out my speed stats, I still can't get enough acceleration to clear some of these gaps, otherwise very simple in the original games. Apparently, this was built from the Underground 2 engine, hence some of the level options which we saw in that game's classic mode. But fuck me! I never had this much trouble trying to navigate that game, so what did they do to it? It feels like Ride's wonky physics were added into this, because we've got that same snapping into rails effect going on here. Now, I'm sure because they were going for that retro feel is the reason we don't get any of the trick chaining or more advanced abilities the series would go on to perfect, but that just makes everything feel so much more lifeless.
Never did I think playing what I would consider to be some of the best levels ever made, and some of my personal favourite levels of all time, could be this desperate and stale.
And as for the physics, where do I even begin? It's what completely balks this game. Makes me want to jump off something and kill myself. If you can remember back to Pro Skater 2, it had the big drop mechanic where falling from too great a height would cause you to bail. I can only ever remember being affected by it in school too, if you missed that big rail on the roofs. Made sense, you would bail in reality, but because it wasn't used much and in certain cases took away from the unrealistic arcade nature, it was removed for following sequels. So why did they bring it back? And why did they allow it to break this fucking game? For whatever reason, the height limit when this mechanic comes into play is drastically lowered. What were simple jumps in the original games are now virtually impossible. Downhill Jam in particular just gets destroyed with this. Every time I try to do anything, Tony just takes a floppy fall. Just try doing the big jump in the finale. It'll never happen and Birdman just bounces away. It's like trampoline physics. It's particularly frustrating being so familiar with how it feels to play these levels normally, because it messes with your head. I know I can make these jumps and am doing absolutely everything right to land them successfully, but this game is like a cheating kid just sat there saying, nope, you did it wrong. Even other objectives. Why is it so difficult trying to collect items? I find myself overshooting most of the time and just being like, fuck it, I'll try again on the next run. It's so frustrating. I can blitz these levels in the original games. Why can't I do the same here?
Why didn't anyone take one look at this thing and think to themselves, maybe we should try to fix that, or maybe we should start from scratch, or maybe, just fucking maybe, we should cancel the entire thing and stop trying to drag this rotten corpse behind us in an effort to drain every last drop of soul out of it. These business practices are putrid, and they're the very reason why whenever I see the words remaster or remake, it makes me want to vomit all over the place.
Although, looking at how the Venice level ended up, I'd say someone beat me to it. What's with the pissy colour? Is the smog in LA really this bad? Or does this take place in some dystopian future? All of the other levels look fine, even with some of the changes, so why does this one look like a cutscene from Ride? Honestly, it might be a bit profane to mention it, but I was never the biggest fan of the Venice level to begin with. Too big with limited skatable terrain and lots of dead space. Fitting as it looks like fucking Mars in this game. You'd think if they ruined all the good levels with botched physics, that would somehow even out and improve the bad ones. But no, they just make them play and look worse. At least I know where to find that bloody bum these days.
You fucking mongrel!
Oi, you're in this game!
Hey, you fucking mongrel!
Oi, you're in this game. Get over
Have
here.
you found me fucking toilet?
What? No!
Get out of my fucking road.
It really just shows how lazily this game was made. From the weird game-breaking physics to the boring, unrewarding gameplay, it's clear the biggest focus here was the graphics, and as a result, everything else fails. Even little things like giving the player a roadmap for finding gaps instead of encouraging exploration. And what's all this about giving the sponsored brands a larger focus than the pro skaters they're associated with? Even the in-game clock is sponsored. Don't you think that's overkill? And then to the bigger things, like this. final level of the game, and I'm not even in the damn level. I'm boundary breaking this bitch. Ridiculous. The lack of refinement through the entire game is devastating. We don't even get any Skate promo videos. I beat the game as Tony Hawk. Where are some clips of him landing cool tricks? In some ways, this part of the experience had more hype than the tight gameplay itself back in the good old days. I'll never forget playing Pro Skater 3 for the first time, seeing all of the bail montages and wild tricks, the developers having a kickflip contest, and musical chairs to win a PS2. Like, holy shit! You want to talk about building a fun workplace that encourages hard work and quality products? This energy of the early 2000s is the key ingredient missing from this remake.
But, speak of the devil, at some point in time a few Pro Skater 3 levels were added in as DLC, because why ruin 2 classic beloved games when you can do it with 3?
The maps in question are Canada, Airport, and of course, Los Angeles. Glad to see that hideous smog has lifted. Also, what a coincidence given the engine this was supposedly built on. Why is it always the same levels being remade? Why doesn't Foundry get some love? That's a whopper level. But whatever, I'm just glad to see these courses treated with a bit more respect than the other. Oh, for fuck's sake, Tony! It wasn't until I got to Canada when I realised, why have some of the more memorable objectives across all of these levels been replaced? Is Bury the Bully too extreme for the PC audience of today? And of course, the big drop mechanic plagues these levels that weren't designed with this in mind, so it's a constant hassle. All that's left to explore is the various other modes. Hawkman from Proving Ground returns. It's okay, but given the game doesn't control as well as you'd like, restricting the path through these levels doesn't help. Big Head mode is all about survival. The goal is to skate for as long as possible, landing high scoring combos to reset your head size back to 0 so it doesn't explode. I like this mode because every awesome combo is killed by the constant bailing, so that's just out of the question. And our only other option is Projectives, just some newer, more challenging goals to attempt in each level. But if I struggle to sit through the normal objectives, why on earth would I want to go back through again, testing my patience even further? All of this would be fine if the game was fine, but it's just not. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater HD gets 3 out of 10. This was a rush job to make as much money as possible for as little effort as possible, and that's blatantly clear. From the dodgy physics and inconsistent control, to the lack of any polish or purpose for playing through this, the only thing I can say this game did as well, if not better than the original games, was the music. Not for the soundtrack itself, but for keeping it playing continuously through resetting levels and navigating menus. It might seem trivial to some, but actually getting to hear songs all the way through is important for me. So for that, we can at least end on a positive.
Well, until tomorrow anyway. Or who knows, maybe tomorrow's game can be the one to save this series. Fuck! I can't even try to hide it because we all know what's next. If a remake of the franchise's biggest titles can bomb, then how does its resurrection even stand a chance? But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a like, subscribe and share. I'm Square Eye Jack and I hope you have a great fucking day. Thanks for watching.